So today we're going to talk about using reverb in buses and how to add reverb as on an individual track and how to use it in a bus and what the advantages and disadvantages are. So I'm using a track that you'll be familiar with.
I believe you're the one for me. Without you, I'll never be.
Alright, so on this track we have obviously your three vocals that we did, and I can kind of show you when you'd want to use reverb on a individual track and when you'd want to use it as a bus. So we're in Logic Pro X, which I believe you said you had. So we're going to have our audio effects right here is how we're going to add our plugins. So you can go to your reverb. You can use any plugin you want. So Space Designer is their IR plugin. It's a little more complicated. It looks like this. They have a couple defaults up here that you can cycle through if you just want to use a random one. And this is on this first track, so we will mute these other two.
I believe you're the one for me.
So you can see it's already adding that reverb. You turn it on and off. So what we have here is an adjustment between the dry sound and the wet or the reverb sound. So dry sound is the track without any audio processing, any reverb on it. So if you reduced it all the way, all we would have is the reverb of this track. So now if we play it,
I believe you're the one
turn this on.
You
can hear it's only that reverb noise. So you can see what it's actually adding to here. And this will adjust or decrease the level of reverb that you're adding to your track. Usually what you want to do if you're adding it to an individual track is always have your dry to max, because you still want that full signal, and then you can adjust how much reverb is coming through with this right here. Let's see. We can also use a simpler reverb. Like this one. Once again, you see you have dry, you have wet. And you have a couple more options here. So your reverb time, the longer the reverb time, the more pronounced that reverb's going to be. The shorter it is, the less it's going to be. Every reverb is a little different, so it's all about finding one that you like to use. Usually I actually use the isotope one. But this will, right here, as you can see for this basic one, it'll allow you to adjust the room size. The bigger the room, the more reverberant the vocal is going to be. So let's see that one.
There's no place I'd rather be. Nothing compares to you and me. We'll find a place and get lost at sea, 'cause you got me.
Let's see, pre-delay. It's going to affect when it's going to start kicking in for those early reflections. Once again, dry and wet, the more reverb you want, you can adjust that. So one thing I recommend with reverb, especially if you're adding it to a track where you're just listening to the vocals, it's usually okay to kind of overdo it a little bit with reverb and with delay when it's soloed, where it might sound like it's a little over the top. Usually in context of a full track, a lot of that overdoneness will actually play well into the track. So it's okay if it kind of sounds a little over the top at times when you're soloing a track and you're adding reverb.
I believe you're the one for me. Without you, I'll never be.
So obviously with this one, what we have is we actually have 3 takes of you doing it. And in a lot of tracks, as you know, they layer vocals. And so what we could do, if we wanted to add the reverb, is we would have to add this reverb to every single track, what you can do, nope. Use of the Pro Tool commands. Anyways, you could copy this over to all of your tracks. So let's go ahead and do that the long way because I'm not super comfortable in Logic. So we'll use the same setting, do big room, so that they're all identical. So what you could do is you could go here and you could add reverb to all 3 tracks so that when they're playing, they all have the same reverb. Cut this one there, cut this one right. So the advantage of adding them to individuals is obviously that you can do, it's a little bit easier to just manipulate with this. The problem with it is, especially with reverb, it's a very processor intensive plugin. So if you start adding reverbs onto every single track, especially if it's a huge session, it's really gonna bog down on your computer, and your computer may not be able to process it fast enough. And you have to then, copy all these settings, which can also be annoying. So a way to get around that is using a aux track through a bus send. So this is that mixer view. You'll need to have this open in order for you to see this aux track. So this actually already created it for me automatically. As soon as you make a send, it'll create an aux track for you. So we are going to send all of these to bus 1. So all sends do and bus tracks do is it diverts the audio. So imagine the signal is coming down top to bottom. It hits this reverb right now currently, and then it gets sent off to this aux track right here. But what sends do is it splits the track. So the audio still continues to come down here, and then this knob here allows us to send a certain amount over to this one. So it does a complete split of the track. So the audio is coming, it keeps going down, and as we adjust this, not only is it coming down here, but it's also going over here. So to show that to you, we will turn this off.
I believe you're the one for me.
So we have this soloed. We're going to solo this aux track. Watch as we increase this. You start to see the signal come over here. As you notice, it's not affecting this signal level either. So it does a clean split where nothing you do here will affect this bottom audio part. So now that we've sent it to an aux track, what you can do here is you can just add the reverb right here. We'll call this reverb. And now we'll just add the reverb onto this one track. Let's do a large space so it's very noticeable. Now, the difference when using reverb on an aux track compared to an individual track comes to this dry-wet balance. You'll notice they turn the dry automatically all the way to 0 when it comes to an aux track. And that's because what we're actually doing is we're using this to balance our dry and our wet. This signal will always come through, it'll always be dry, and so all we're doing, the more we send or the less we send, will affect how wet that aux track becomes. So I actually usually bump this all the way to max, so I know this is a full wet, this is a full dry, I can blend with here. What you could also do is just send a certain amount always to your aux track, and then you could blend with how much wet is over here. So now what we'll do is we'll play the track again.
I believe you're the one
you can hear
for
it's that
me.
completely dry track
Without
right
you,
now.
I'll never be.
So now
the
as we
universe,
send this bus,
it can't compete 'cause you got me.
you can hear it starting to pick
There's
up that
no
reverb.
place I'd rather be. Nothing compares to you and me. We'll find our place and get lost at sea 'cause you got me, got me. Never let go.
And so the advantage of this is now, let's say we're listening to the second track.
I believe you're the one for me. Without you, I'll never be. The universe, it can't compete, 'cause you got me.
We can send all of these buses here. So the one issue we're having is that right now this is sending and still picking up the signal even though this track isn't on. Let's try this.
There's no place I'd rather be. Nothing compares to you and me. We'll find our place and get lost at sea, 'cause you got me.
Now we'll mute this one, and now it's here.
Never let. I believe you're the one for me. Without you, I'll never be. The universe is.
So now what we have is we have this reverb bus track that is adjusting the same type of reverb to all three vocals. So basically what you can do is you can kind of design a space with each reverb track. So you could make another space for if there was guitars that were in, your song that would have a different reverb or a different sound, and you could send all of those to them. This allows us to use one plugin so that we're not using all that processor power to power them on all three, and each vocal is getting the same reverb. So we'll pan hard left and right, keep this middle.
One for me. Without you, I'll never be. The universe, it can't compete, 'cause you got me. There's no place I'd rather be. Nothing compares to you and me.
And so that's how you would use reverb with a bus track. And so what it's doing is it's sending these signals down here. We're getting our dry signal. They're all going to this stereo output, which is this master fader right here. And so all of this is getting sent out to this plugin as well. So all these buses are diverting that audio over here. It's coming down, and it's also going to stereo out. So this wet track is combining with the dry tracks over here in this master output. And so that's kind of the advantage of using the reverb on an aux track. It's more common to use it on an aux track in music. For smaller projects where it's like one vocal, one piano, you might see more of this using it on individual tracks. But especially on bigger pop songs where there's tons of vocal tracks, you're going to send it all into one aux right here. And so the other advantage